What is going on, guys? It is NFL Tactics here, back with some more news. Join us now as we look at the wildest news stories you need to know, including Cowboys criticized for Troy Aikman snub as Dolphins add him in new role. Also, Shilo Sanders weighs in after Jaden Ivey's controversial exit sparks debate on athlete expression. Now, let's get straight into our first story. Jerry Jones is once again facing criticism. And this time it's not about a roster move or a contract decision. It's about something deeper, something that speaks to how the Dallas Cowboys have handled one of the most important figures in franchise history. And at the same time, a completely different story is unfolding across the sports world, where Shilo Sanders is raising questions about what athletes can and cannot say in today's environment. Both situations may seem unrelated at first, but they point to a larger conversation about leadership, communication, and how organizations treat the people connected to them. Let's start in Dallas, where the conversation begins with Troy Aikman. Aikman recently revealed that the Cowboys never approached him for any kind of consulting role after his playing career ended. For a player who helped define an era of success, that statement alone raised eyebrows. But it didn't stop there. Former Cowboys wide receiver Holley took it a step further, calling the decision a highest level of malpractice. That's a strong phrase, especially when directed at a front office led by Jerry Jones. Holley's argument is simple. If you're going to consult people for football decisions, how do you leave out someone like Aikman? This is a quarterback who led the franchise to 3 Super Bowl titles, earned a Super Bowl MVP, and became one of the defining faces of the Cowboys' most successful era. His experience isn't just valuable, it's foundational to what the organization once represented. And yet, according to Aikman himself, that connection was never revisited in a meaningful way. He mentioned that consulting roles like the one he's now taking on in Miami weren't even part of the conversation in Dallas. That detail matters because it suggests this wasn't a one-time oversight. It was a long-term organizational choice. Meanwhile, the Miami Dolphins saw something different. After a disappointing 7-10 season, Miami made several changes, including bringing in a new general manager and head coach. As part of that shift, they added Aikman as a consultant, giving him an opportunity to contribute his perspective both on and off the field. It's a move that highlights contrast more than anything else. One organization saw value in his experience. The other never acted on it. And that contrast is what makes this story resonate. Holley didn't just criticize the decision in isolation. He connected it to a larger pattern, suggesting that choices like this are part of why the Cowboys haven't sustained success over the past 3 decades. That's a significant claim, but it reflects a sentiment that's been building among fans and analysts alike. When a franchise with as much history and visibility as Dallas continues to fall short of expectations, every decision gets examined more closely. And when those decisions involve someone like Aikman, the scrutiny becomes even sharper. There's also a symbolic element here. Aikman isn't just a former player. He represents a standard. Alongside names like Emmitt Smith and Michael Irvin, he's part of a core group that defined what winning looked like in Dallas. Leaving someone like that out of the conversation sends a message, whether intentional or not. It raises questions about how the organization values its own history and whether it's fully leveraging the people who helped build it. At the same time, it's important to acknowledge that front office decisions are rarely simple. There are internal dynamics, existing structures, and long-standing roles that influence how teams operate. Aikman himself even pointed out that certain personnel within the Cowboys don't have the kind of consulting responsibilities that other teams might offer. That context doesn't eliminate the criticism, but it does add another layer to the discussion. Still, the core question remains: should a franchise like Dallas have found a way to involve Troy Aikman in a meaningful capacity? Because now, he's bringing that insight somewhere else, And for Cowboys fans, that reality may be difficult to ignore. While that conversation continues, another one is taking shape in a completely different part of the sports world. This time, it involves Shilo Sanders and the reaction to Jaden Ivey's situation in the NBA. Ivey's departure from the Chicago Bulls came after a series of social media posts that sparked controversy. His comments focused on his religious beliefs and included criticism of the NBA's celebration of Pride Month. The organization ultimately waived him, citing conduct detrimental to the team. That decision quickly became a topic of debate, not just among basketball fans, but across the broader sports community. And that's where Shilo Sanders entered the conversation. Speaking during a live stream, Sanders shared his perspective on what the situation represents for athletes today. His main point centered on the idea that players often feel limited in what they can say publicly. According to Sanders, there's a sense that being fully authentic can come with consequences, especially when opinions don't align with the prevailing environment. It's a perspective that reflects a growing tension in professional sports. On one hand, athletes are encouraged to use their platforms and speak openly. On the other, there are clear expectations about how those platforms are used. When those expectations are challenged, the response can be swift. In Ivey's case, the timeline was notable. The Bulls made their decision just hours after his comments gained attention, signaling how quickly situations like this can escalate. There were also reports suggesting that his behavior had already created some friction within the organization, with staff members describing him as preachy around the locker room. That detail adds context, but it doesn't settle the broader question. Where is the line between personal expression and professional responsibility? Sanders' comments don't provide a definitive answer, but they highlight how complex the issue has become. For athletes, the stakes are high. Their words don't just reflect on themselves. They impact teammates, organizations, and entire fan bases. At the same time, they are individuals with their own beliefs and perspectives. Balancing those realities isn't easy, and situations like this show how quickly that balance can shift. It's also worth noting that reactions within the sports world haven't been uniform. While some have supported the Bulls' decision, others have expressed concern about what it means for freedom of expression. That divide is part of what makes this story so compelling. It's not just about one player or one team. It's about the evolving relationship between athletes and the platforms they occupy. And in that sense, it connects back to the earlier conversation about Aikman and the Cowboys. Both stories involve questions of value and voice. In Dallas, the question is whether a legendary figure was given the respect and opportunity his career warranted. In Chicago, the question is how much space athletes have to express their beliefs without facing professional consequences. Different situations, but similar underlying themes. How do organizations manage relationships with the people connected to them? How do they balance tradition, performance, and public perception? And how do those decisions shape the future? For the Dolphins, bringing in Aikman represents a step toward incorporating experience in a new way. For the Cowboys, the criticism suggests there may have been missed opportunities. For the Bulls, the decision to move on from Ivey reflects a commitment to certain standards. For players like Shilo Sanders, the conversation is about what those standards mean for individual expression. None of these answers are simple, and that's why these stories continue to generate discussion. Because at their core, they're about more than just football or basketball. They're about how organizations and individuals navigate an environment where every decision is visible, every comment is analyzed, and every outcome carries weight. As these situations continue to unfold, the perspectives around them will likely keep evolving. But the questions they raise aren't going away anytime soon. They're part of a larger conversation about the direction of professional sports and the role that players, teams, and leadership all play within it. And that brings us back to where we started, with Jerry Jones, Troy Aikman, and a decision that's now being viewed through a much wider lens. Because sometimes, the most important moves aren't the ones you make. They're the ones you don't. And in this case, that absence is what's driving the conversation forward.